Welcome to today's episode of In Conversation With. I'm lucky to be joined by Isabella from What Three Words. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Just back from Italy.
Just back from Italy, yes.
And how was it? I suppose last weekend must have been a lot of fun being in Italy.
Yes, I was actually in London for the match, so I couldn't celebrate with my fellow Italians, but it was a good feeling.
Well, look, thank you for making some time. Just very quickly, tell us what you do for What Three Words.
Sure. So I am Director of International Markets Business Development, which means that my responsibility is really to make sure that What Three Words is used and known outside of the UK, where it's really pretty well known and there's a high level of usage and awareness. So we want to make sure that everybody anywhere can use What Three Words.
So let's start with that, because I think people are beginning to become familiar with What Three Words, and I've noticed that there's been a huge campaign recently on television. There's adverts now for What Three Words, specifically for What Three Words, as opposed to it being kind of tied in with another brand. But there may still be people who are unfamiliar with the service. So let's start there. What is What Three Words?
Sure, absolutely. So What Three Words in a nutshell is an addressing system. And it tries to combine the precision of GPS coordinates with the simplicity of using words from the dictionary. So right now, when I'm speaking to you, I'm at Starts Photos Panic. And that's the only place with that address. So the way we did it is that we divided the entire world, into a grid of 3 by 3 meters. And each one of these squares, and there are 57 trillion roughly, it's been assigned a fixed and unique address, which is made of 3 words from the dictionary. So there are not 2 squares, 3 by 3 meters, that have the same 3-word address. So the system is pretty simple, right? And a lot of people sometimes ask me, wow, how is that possible? Nobody else thought about it before. But yeah, sometimes simple ideas are the best ones.
What I love about it, I was lucky enough to talk to Claire Jones, your COO, a few years ago on the podcast, Tech Talks. And what struck me, I think, then, and people often say to me, what was your favourite episode? We've done nearly 400 episodes now, and What Three Words still jumps out because it's so simple. It's one of those ideas where I kind of sat there and go, I could have thought of that. I mean, I wouldn't have ever been able to actually execute it, yes. But the idea itself is wonderfully simple and so kind of so easy to see how it could be applied. And funnily enough, a few years ago, I found it's one of its wonderful uses. I was queuing for tickets for the last night of the proms at the Royal Albert Hall, which is typically kind of 9 hours in a queue. And people were very jealous when I managed to order Domino's to the queue.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you can get anything or go anywhere, and find a 3-word address. Absolutely.
So look, you mentioned where you're sitting. I'm sitting at Often Campfire's Warthog. They had a few different choices. You can kind of obviously, there's a few different squares that would apply to the house, but that was my particular favourite. But beyond a novelty, look, why do we need What Three Words? Beyond kind of getting Domino's to a queue, right? What are the kind of the practical kind of reasons where you go, this really begins to make sense and helps people out? Sure,
and I think that people don't always, especially if you live in a city or in a country where addresses are pretty good, you don't often realize there are so many places that don't really have a precise or complete address. So just to give you a couple of examples that anyone could relate to, next weekend I'm driving up to Yorkshire. I've never been there. I don't drive a lot outside of London. So if my car breaks down in the middle of the motorway, I need to find an easy way to tell the breakdown service where exactly to pick me up. But if you are along the side of a motorway, it's not really easy, especially if you're not familiar with the area, if you don't know the mileage. So you need to find a landmark or some sort of way to describe where you are. With What Three Words, you would just be opening up the app and look at the 3-word address of where you are. And on the other side, they know exactly where to come and pick you up. But that's one example of we're talking about England, so really good addressing system, generally speaking, but there are some places where addresses are not just precise. Or if you and I were meeting in person rather than virtually, and we're meeting in Regent's Park, for example, huge park. So how do we decide exactly where to meet? Usually we'll be calling each other, trying to find each other, even if we said roughly south entrance or east entrance. So there are so many places where there might be a generic address, but there is no precise address as you would think about it, with a street number, street name, postcode, and so on. And I'm not even going into the billions of people around the world that just don't have any address, because there's many countries and regions without or very, very poor addressing systems. So I just gave you a couple of examples that could relate to anyone living anywhere.
So you're kind of beginning to touch on a couple of key questions there, because I suppose how you spread adoption of a technology like this is crucial, right? It's, I suppose, to a lot of people, the idea of downloading another app onto their phone, and in that situation where they're kind of maybe they have broken down or they're lost and they're a bit stressed, maybe they won't think to open what three words, or if they do open what three words, can they be sure that if they have broken down in the UK, will the emergency services know what they're on about if they start talking about what three words? So is the adoption going to be achieved through consumers, through being in situations where they go, here's the solution that can get me out of this situation, and actually having it on their phone? Or is it going to be through partnerships and people being encouraged to use it, not necessarily by you, but say by the emergency services or Lonely Planet if it's a travel guide or something along those lines?
Yeah, that's really a great question, and it needs to be both, right? It's an addressing system, so you need consumers, you need businesses, you need the entire ecosystem to adopt what three words for it to be as useful as possible. Just to give an example, so if you download the app on your phone, you can find your what three word address, you can find a what three word address or any place in the world, you can share it with me, you can save it, but that's not really enough, right? You also want to be able to go into your car and tell your car, take me to Apple Banana Spoon, rather than having to type or try to say by voice a very long address. You want to make sure that when your hotel booking sends your booking confirmation, you get the confirmation with a what three word address, so you don't have any trouble getting there. You want to make sure that at checkout you can use what three word address, so you get your packages exactly where you need them to come to you. So you really need both. And that's in terms of consumers. We do our education and marketing campaigns, so we do our part in telling people how what three words could be useful, but it is as useful as many businesses and services integrate what three words into their products, services, and operations. And so, we work in parallel, marketing and awareness for consumers, but also partnerships and business development with company and businesses.
And given that you're trying to spread this around the world, and as we've mentioned, kind of your job is to look beyond the UK, are there certain territories where partnerships will have more of an impact, say, than consumer-driven behaviour? I suppose what I'm asking is, are there any examples really of countries where you kind of go, this country, it's quite easy to grow quickly because of the way that people use technology, or actually if we could get it into X, Y, or Z service? I'm thinking of, if you're looking at the developing world where there aren't, I suppose, as reliable address systems, how you do that. And then also how reliable some of those people can get on the service. This requires a smartphone, right? So I suppose for some parts of the world where they don't have an address system, do they have the means, do they have the technology to be able to use it?
Right, no, absolutely. So to answer the first part of your question, the process of getting what three words really started and adopted in any market is pretty much the same. No matter where you are, you need, if you really, which is our goal, if you really want to make what three words an addressing system that is used and becomes natural as any other address, you really need to have both. So I don't think there are easy markets and difficult markets, or markets where you just go and immediately you get millions of people using what three words without any education or any effort or any partnerships on the business side. But surely there are markets where addressing is a big problem. If we think about the Middle East and Saudi, it's a big market. It's growing so fast in terms of technology and e-commerce, and there is a quite people have purchasing power. So it's a great market in terms of like it's advanced in some ways. But the addressing system is really, really poor. There are no postcodes. Sometimes there are no roads or road names. They're just neighborhoods. And so they rely on people to really know where they're going. But it's also a country that is growing in terms of construction and buildings. So it's absolutely a great market for what words. So there are markets that are very suitable. Although, to be honest, some of our greatest markets in terms of adoptions are the UK, Germany, US, Canada, which are all advanced markets with really developed addressing systems. But again, there are so many instances where addresses are not so precise. So I think that this is what I personally really like. It's a product that can work for the developed world, so all the fancy techie use cases, all the use cases that also enhance your life. So it's drone deliveries, it's normal deliveries, it's using what words in navigation systems in your car. But on the other side, there is absolutely also the other side of what words, enabling signing up for a SIM card or getting medical support where you need it. And so it's really a product that can, or in general, the addressing problem, it's got many layers, and what words is quite suitable no matter what.
It's interesting because I suppose my rather inarticulate question was that there is this trade-off, isn't there, between the developed markets, which you would imagine it might actually be harder to get a new technology like this to be adopted, because you kind of go, well, we've got postcodes, we've got addresses. And yeah, all right, the specific examples of if you break down in the middle of nowhere make perfect sense. Mm-hmm. But they've got the technology in hand to be able, we're used to kind of downloading a new app and adopting the service. And we've kind of, over the last 10 years in this country, we've got used to the idea of challenger banks and other kind of services, adopting new services. So something like this, yeah, fine. But in other countries where there aren't those address systems, you kind of go, yeah, I can see that there's a massive opportunity, but they might not have the technology available to be able to look at a phone screen and go, these are my three words.
Yes, and we have a few great examples of what words being used in those type of situations. So just to give you an example, a few years ago, we worked with an organization called Gateway Health in South Africa. They provide healthcare to women, especially women that are pregnant and they're about to give birth. And one of their problems was that when these women called with emergency problems, they didn't have an address. So very often the medical support will get there too late. And so as part of our work with this association, some of the doctors and the staff went around all these houses with a smartphone, providing these women with a 3-word address of their house. So they were just literally writing what 3 words on a piece of paper, or giving them a sticker or something they could put into a Bible or a book. So, and whenever they needed to call the emergency, they would just have to pick this piece of paper and give the address where they were. So yes, at some point or somewhere in the chain, there will need to be someone with a smartphone giving you your what 3 word address, or sending you a text message where you can just click and open a very simple website. We also created initially for the South Africa market, and now it's something that we're using more widely, a very simple stripped down version of our mobile website that loads with very little connectivity, and you can see just the 3 words of where you are. So there are ways that we can work around this lack of technology, but it is something that probably at some point we'll start exploring even more.
Now, in some respects, I kind of look at this and think it's almost like this wonderful gift, like a global address system that kind of works. And, some of those examples there that you were giving of women then being able to kind of get medical medical help to their homes. I know that the service has been used by the UN Disaster Recovery Agency, I think. So the idea that if you had a refugee camp, which obviously doesn't have an address system to get aid packages, these are all wonderful examples of technology being used for good. Does feel like it's a bit of a gift for the world, right? Hey guys, here's an address system that all these companies can use and all these services can use. Where's the business behind this? Is it that, okay, you give it to the emergency services because it's doing good, but when Domino's use it, they have to be able to, they pay you a certain fee to be able to use the service? Where's the business behind this?
Yes. So What Rewards, so the app and website and everything is free for consumers. We also don't charge emergency services, don't charge NGOs, but what businesses pay What Rewards for is to license our API. So in other words, we charge businesses like the Domino's, the car companies, etc., that use What Rewards to improve their operations, to get a commercial benefit at the end of the day. They save costs or they increase their efficiencies. It really depends on the type of business, but what they pay for is to get our code and convert a What Road address into coordinates that they can use for routing, for navigation, for optimizing their routes, really. So yeah, it's not a really novel or business model. It's been there for many years. It's the geocoding that the same thing that happens when you type a normal address like 35 Kings Road, London, into any digital mapping system.
Now, there was an article in the paper this morning talking about the fact that, I won't say which, but one of the other kind of widely available mapping services might lead people to slightly treacherous paths when navigating Ben Nevis. And you kind of think about the user cases in the UK for What Three Words, and as you said, breaking down on a motorway. Maybe it might be a hiker out in the hills, say in the Lake District or the Pennines, who gets into trouble, and despite it being good weather at this time of year, people can find themselves in very dangerous situations. Does the app need signal? What are the challenges when you're looking at this in terms of, because typically if you're up in the Cairngorms in Scotland, you might open your phone and find that you've got no signal whatsoever, and therefore this wonderful piece of technology falls flat, right? Or does it?
Yes, and I think that's really one of the reasons why What Rewards has been so widely adopted by emergency services and by communities of hikers, fishing, like hunting, like anywhere where you probably will go somewhere beautiful, but with not connection for your phone. Because once you have the app downloaded, and you can download it any point when you have Wi-Fi or when you have connectivity, but once the app is on your phone, it will work offline. Because as long as the location is enabled on your phone, you'll be able to open it up and see the 3 words of your current location. You'll be able to search for 3 words. And you'll also be able to navigate to some extent using our compass feature. So you won't be able to see probably the map tiles in the background, because that requires connectivity. You won't be able to use any navigation feature from any navigation app that you have unless it works offline, but you'll be able to see your 3 words. And in the same way, companies, businesses, apps, and we are integrated with a number of hiking apps or outdoors apps. If they work offline, they can leverage the What Rewards SDK to integrate our code into their app. So the What Rewards will work offline, even inside third-party apps. So there are absolutely,
Very randomly, I was recording a podcast talking about this particular issue just before we jumped to this recording. So I've got a prop ready, total accident, but here is an OS map. Our advice to hikers this summer is take your OS map, take your compass, because you might not be able to necessarily see the terrain around you on What Three Words, but if you get into trouble, you can still get your What Three Words, still get that through the emergency services. So hopefully you know where you are according to the map, and they can come find you, because they'll be able to get an exact pinpoint on you.
Right, and really What Rewards is one more tool when you're going on little adventures, hiking or kayaking, boating. So those are really big use cases in the UK as well. It's one more tool, and you're gonna have your compass, you're gonna have your maps. But if you are not really professional, you might not be so familiar with using that type of equipment. So again, it's quite a safe thing to do, to download What3Words on your phone and be ready. Hopefully you're not going to be using What3Words for emergency. I hope you're going to be using that more for fun things, for traveling, for deliveries, but it's definitely useful to have it there.
Look, I can tell you, as someone who's an amateur trail runner,
right,
those extra services are quite comforting sometimes when you head off cross country going, I think this is the right way. Okay. So look, what's the future for What3Words? Services like yours tend to get bought up by bigger organisations, right, and amalgamated into part of their service offering. Do you think that's likely to what's going to happen, or do you see it being, have you still as an independent company got a mission and a long way to go?
So at the moment, we're really laser focused on making What3Words a global standard. So that's our goal. We know that we have a great product that is many industries and many people find really useful. And we want to make sure that it becomes known and popular outside of the UK, outside of some other markets where it's getting a lot of traction, like the US, Germany, India, Canada, and so on. So that's really where we're putting all of our energy and all our efforts. And I've lived in Silicon Valley for a few years, so I've seen so many businesses that were built to be sold super fast. And What3Words is not that kind of business, because our co-founder and CEO, Chris, built What3Words and came up with this idea that you and I could have had, because he was solving his own problem. He used to run a music business, and he was struggling every day with the issue of getting people, packages, deliveries, singers, musicians to the right spots on a big festival site or the right entrance of a big venue. So the spirit of What3Words has been, we're going to build something that solves a real problem for real people and real businesses. And what happens as a consequence of striving to get to that goal and to fulfill our mission, we'll see.
The last thing that I'd love to ask is just around your advice to businesses who are looking to achieve mass adoption in multiple territories. Like, that growth, that scale piece is so hard. I almost feel like you're on that journey of, where What3Words becomes this phrase for an address that people begin to adopt in the same way that people have adopted Uber for taxis and Airbnb for holiday rentals. I think people talk about an Airbnb when it's not an Airbnb. So what's your advice in trying to go on that journey should another business come along and go, this is what we're trying to achieve?
Right. Well, I wish I had a recipe for success, because I would be the first one applying it. But it's really tough. It's really challenging, and there is no way around it. It's a big challenge. But I would say maybe the very first thing is making sure that your product or service, if you want to expand globally or across different markets, is suitable for those markets. In our case, for example, What3Words was built with the idea of being global. So this grid of 3x3 meters covers the entire world. There's not little desert or island that is a piece of the ocean that is not covered. So it's global already in nature, but it's also made up of words. And words are really language specific. And we want them to be language specific because it's meant to be user friendly. So we started with English, but now we're available in nearly 50 languages and counting. And that's really important when we enter a new market, that we know, okay, do we have everything we need to succeed in this market? So that's the first piece. But then probably the most difficult bit is to find the right balance between scaling fast and find a way to be in many markets in a way that is actually sustainable and scalable, and localization. And going on either extreme is not going to help you, because if you try to copy paste what worked in the US or in the UK to all the other markets, like blankly, you get lucky and you'll be succeeding in some markets, but you'll be failing miserably in others without knowing why. But on the other hand, if you spend tons of time researching and strategizing how to approach each market, that's really too expensive and time consuming. So finding that balance between applying what you learn in some markets to others, but also understanding really quickly what you need to customize and localize for that market. And it's really the key, and it's so difficult. So it's really a matter of like trying, failing fast, tweaking your approach and trying again and rinse and repeat, really.
Well, look, it's been fascinating to talk to you. I think you've got a wonderful weekend weather-wise for your first trip to Yorkshire. Whereabouts in Yorkshire are you headed?
Actually, that's going to be next weekend.
Oh, that's next weekend. Oh, well, the weather should be good.
Right. So this weekend will be a lot more local. We'll be London, enjoying the sunshine, maybe some barbecues.
Well, enjoy your first trip to Yorkshire. It's a wonderful place to use something like 3 words, that's for sure. And thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Dave. Pleasure.